And we are joined now by the assistant head coach of the Hoosiers, defensive coordinator, Doug Mallory. Doug, obviously defense is an area where this group has to improve. We saw, some spring practice, obviously, so you have a little bit of a sense of where the areas of improvement have occurred. Mm-hmm. You've seen a few days here in the fall, so I know it's kind of hard to read too much into it. But where do you feel like the biggest jumps have been made?
Well, again, I think really at all three positions. I think just coming out of spring, we essentially had the same defense that we did this past fall. With the loss, the two kids that we had lost were the two kids at the D-tackle position. I felt the secondary felt we made some strides coming out of the spring. Same thing at the linebacker position, at the D-end position. But I think we're starting to see now is just the recruiting class we were able to sign this past year. As those kids came in, worked over the summer, and as they reported for camp, we just feel like we've got a little bit more depth and a little bit more competition at every spot on defense. Still a work in progress. We're playing a lot of young kids in there right now, either at the second team and some kids getting an opportunity at the first team, and it's still a work in progress, kind of feeling their way around a little bit, but I feel like we've got it going in the right direction.
One of the unique things that we've seen the last couple of times we've been here, because Navy's been on your schedule, that you take part of practice and go against the wishbone. What's the thinking behind that?
And again, that's something we even did a year ago. We started back in the spring, and we took 15 practices in the spring, preparing for a team that we played in week 7. This year we weren't able to put as much time into it in the spring, but as coaches we researched it a little bit more and came up with a little bit more of an extensive package, and we just started the bone work here yesterday. So I know you've got a pretty good background, pretty good feel for that offense, so I may pick your mind here before you leave today to see if you got any advice.
Coach, talk to me a little bit about this. Obviously the offense is getting all sorts of praises. Mm-hmm. Defensively, we know there are areas there that you need to improve. Mm-hmm. But when you guys go back into your meeting rooms and you're talking to the young players and your veterans, what is the message to them to get better, and how do you gauge that?
Well, I think, again, the first thing, we don't necessarily, talk much about what's happened here in the past. I think the lack of success, that's the last thing we want to talk about. Kind of want to talk about where we're going. And to me, it's a process. Like each and every day, just sticking to the plan, sticking to the work ethic, continue to improve on fundamentals and technique, continue to get the work ethic and the effort to the football, and, continue to develop some physical, toughness out there. Those are the things we're striving to work on, and feel like, we've demonstrated some of that here over the first 5 practices, but it's a work in progress.
Doug, the game has changed so much with the spread offense that people that hold your position, defensive coordinator, you're on the field longer, you're seeing different things. You've been a defensive coach most of your career. How has that changed defenses and how you coach defense?
I think one of the things, that's changed is now having to play the quarterback as a potential runner. Like back in the day, you were able to load the box and outnumber, the offense, whereas now when you've got to treat him as a potential runner, that you've got to commit more guys to stopping the run. I think the other thing too is now as teams are spreading you out, I think it forces you to be a little bit more athletic. It forces you to, putting the stress on, making plays in space. Right now we're playing a little bit more 3 linebacker than we have in the past. In the years past we've substituted, played a little bit more nickel versus some of the spread, whereas now we're trying to get our linebackers to be able to make a little bit more plays out in space and not have to sub and match personnel all the time. But ultimately the game's spread out, which I think forces kids to be put in that spot where they got to make plays in the open field.
You've got some young players that have come in. It looks like they're going to be able to contribute in the defensive line, the linebackers, and in the secondary. How would you assess some of those guys to this point?
Well, they're coming on. I think one of the things with the NCAA, they don't allow coaches to get involved with these kids over the summer. So I think one of the things it does is it puts a little bit more on the leadership of your program. And I think to see some of our older kids, our juniors and our seniors, kids who've been around this program, where those kids, ran the player practices, where those kids worked with the younger kids and taught them the system and the scheme. I think that speaks volumes about some of the leadership we're starting to develop around here. I felt good, even just the 2 young men that I work with, the 2 safeties, how far along they were, when I was first able to meet with them, just their knowledge of our scheme. I really was impressed. And again, I think that just goes back to the juniors and seniors in our program. So that was encouraging.
Building a bit on Howard's question, it seems to me there's a little bit of a trade-off here with the youth, because obviously with youth comes that inexperience, not necessarily having been out there in pressure situations. What's the decision-making process with a young guy that you know is going to be a key part of this program down the line, but when you're trying to win today?
Again, I think those kids are getting a lot of reps in practice, and they're kind of learning under fire right now. We got down to the last segment of practice today, essentially that second defense were the majority of our freshmen. But again, I think the more reps they get, the more work that they get. You'd like to think they're going to continue to develop. Yeah, I think we've got enough older veterans right now that I think early on, those kids, I think are going to be able to at least start games. But I'd like to think we're going to be able to get some of these younger guys rotating in, keep them fresh, and again continue to work that competition and create the depth that we need to be successful.
Defensive coordinator Doug Mallory. Thanks, Coach.
Appreciate it. Thank you.